And we're live. Hi, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I'm Lulu Freistadt. I am the Executive Director of Smart Elections. And let's get you some information about us. Smart Elections is a nonpartisan nonprofit, and we are dedicated to elevating election reform to an urgent national priority, which it absolutely needs to be. And if anybody has been following what's been going on in our elections, and I have a feeling if you're here with us, then you have been following it, and maybe you're tearing your hair out. I know that many of the people working with us and in my circles of friends and family are frustrated, confused, and they really want to know what's going on and what can we do to make it better. So that's what we're all about here. And in particular, we do focus on election protection. And the idea of election protection is that it's not just the voters who need protection, they do. And I think there's been a long historical effort to reduce voter suppression and to really expand what they call the franchise, which is a fancy way of saying like everybody gets to vote, right? In the beginning, we know that there were a lot of people who didn't get to vote. So we know how important it is that everybody who's eligible gets to vote, but we also want to really make sure that every single vote is counted. That is so important. And we don't really have the same amount of emphasis on counting the votes as we do on making sure that people do vote. So one of the things that Smart Elections really focuses on is making sure that every vote is counted and that every vote is counted accurately as intended. That means if I vote for a candidate, it's not just that I want a vote counted, I want to know that my vote counted for the candidate that I chose. And because of the way that our elections are structured here in the US, we are voting on voting machines. And those voting machines have a lot of security vulnerabilities. Many times we are not auditing them. The National Election Defense Coalition estimates that only 25% of counties are actually auditing in a way that is robust enough to give confidence in the elections. That's 75% of races that are not being audited in a way to provide confidence. So we have a long way to go there. And I think anybody who's really been following this whole election cycle will agree that we have a long way to go. And so what are we going to do tonight? We're going to focus on two different states. New York, that may be a surprise to you, but New York has a very big election protection battle coming up in regard to its voting machines. And Georgia, where everybody is really focused right now because there are two, not one, but two Senate runoffs. That means they had an election in November, and the two top winners for the Senate race in both of this, there are two Senate races, and the two top contenders in each of those races is now having a runoff race to see who is going to represent Georgia in the Senate in those two seats. But what everybody is so focused on Georgia because those two seats are going to decide control of the Senate, and control of the Senate is going to decide control of the whole country in a way. Because the House is controlled by the Democrats, and the White House, we believe now, will be controlled by the Democrats, as Joe Biden seems to have won this election. And so the Senate, if it's Republican, there's going to be a lot of combat, basically, between the Senate and those other two branches, the executive branch and the House legislators. But if the Democrats win the Senate, that is what they call a trifecta. And what that means is that the Democrats will control all three houses of government. They will control, well, they'll control not all three houses of government. They don't control the, we all know they do not control the Supreme Court, but they would control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And so the Democrats are really swinging for the fences here. And what they've got to do is they've got to win two Georgia Senate seats, and they've got to win them on the voting machine that is currently in use in Georgia. And we're going to talk tonight about what that voting machine, like what that voting machinery is, and how those votes were counted in the presidential race. We've been doing a lot of work on our project. Here at Smart Elections, we have a project called Count the Vote, and we have been looking at a lot of data from that November election, especially in Georgia, and I'm going to show you some of that tonight. So the first thing I want to do is just say, there's really a split in the country right now, a huge divide between what the beliefs are about what happened in this last election. And I want to just show you a headline, basically, from this is from Politico, and there was a poll done pretty recently, and it showed that 70% of Republicans don't think the election was free and fair. And this is just a huge, huge difference from the Democrats. 90% of Democrats now say the election was free and fair. So that's basically your entire camp of Democrats saying everything's fine, everything's hunky-dory, and your entire camp of Republicans saying we are enraged, we think the election was stolen, and we're not comfortable with what happened. And that is a huge problem. And other countries, other major democracies are not experiencing this. This is a problem that is actually completely unique to the United States. Benny's calling me. Benny, we're on the forum. Are you joining us?
You said you were going to send me a link, but you didn't.
I did send you the link. I sent you the link through email.
To my Gmail?
I sent it to your email account. Go check your email and join us here.
I don't have it in my Gmail.
Okay, I'll send it again. We're a little bit, just doing things all over the place. We have a lot going on, but we want Benny to join us. And so let's just go send him that email again. And okay, hopefully Benny is on his way to join us, because he always adds so much to the conversation. So what I want to do for you right now is we're talking about the real divide in the country between the Democrats and the Republicans. And it's really important to put this in perspective. And one of the things that it's important to keep in mind is that whether or not people believe the results of the election really often hinges on whether or not their candidate wins. So right now, the Republicans lost, and they think the election was rigged. But I'm going to play you a clip from John Kerry, and this was a fairly recent interview a couple years ago, but he was talking about the election from 2004. And there were a lot of people, and I'm going to say myself included, who did not think that the results of the 2004 election were accurate. I absolutely thought that there were a lot of problems with that election, but nobody official ever said anything. And I'm going to play you this clip from John Kerry.
But we knew that of the provisional votes that were waiting to be counted or able to be counted, we didn't have the numbers necessary to have the margin according to what they had. I'm
going to take that back a little bit. This is
very, very right about it
okay, let's start it here.
Think about it here and then. But we knew that of the provisional votes that were waiting to be counted or able to be counted, we didn't have the numbers necessary to have the margin according to what they had decided to count or the way the machines came in. The problem for us was we were doubting whether the machines themselves had been appropriately measured and whether the algorithm was correct. So we challenged that ahead of time, by the way. People don't know that. And we were told by the court that you were not able to get that algorithm to check it because it was proprietary information. And I believe that it was absolutely incorrect that in the United States of America, the election for the presidency of the United States should somehow be the purview of privately owned machines where the public doesn't have the right to know whether the algorithm's been checked or whether they're hackable or not. And we now know they are hackable. But we knew as we sat there to decide where to go in terms of the challenge, that we were a nation at war. We'd just been through a Supreme Court test of an election 4 years earlier. I thought, as I measured it, that whatever constitutional challenge we brought or whatever appropriate challenge we brought to the ballots that were counted, it was going to wind up ultimately in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would do the same thing that it did before. We would take the country through a 3-month exercise with a 5-4 decision that would award the presidency back to George Bush. Now, some people may think that's the right thing to have done. I thought it would have been horrendous for our country 1 year into a war, at that moment where there were serious doubts about terrorism and other things, to be going through a long period of questioning who the president is. And I didn't think it was the right thing to do for the nation.
John Kerry is here. His memoir just out, his new and only memoir, Every Day is Extra, will continue, including your calls. Stay with us.
Okay, so that's John Kerry saying that he thought in 2004 the election was rigged. And he chose not to say something about it. And there were a lot of Democrats at that time who were livid, who felt that the election was rigged, and they wanted him to say something, and they wanted him to stand up. And now what you have is a lot of Democrats saying, well, these Republicans are being completely, sore losers, and they should keep their mouths shut and just, get with the program here because our candidate won. But what I'm saying is that it is not necessarily the Democrats or the Republicans that are at fault. It is our system that is at fault, because our system of voting is not providing voters and candidates with the confidence and the evidence that we need in order to be able to move on after an election, in order for each candidate and each voter to have faith that their vote was counted accurately and then to accept the results of the election. That's what democracy is. Democracy means that people can say, okay, I'm sad I lost, I'm frustrated, we didn't do a good job, but we accept that we did lose. And in other countries, if you look at the vote, for example, in Brexit was the vote in the United Kingdom where they had to decide whether or not they were going to leave the European Union. And it was a pretty close vote. It was 52-48 ultimately. And it was surprise. It was a very surprising turnout that the UK decided to leave the European Union. But there was no talk of it being hacked in any way. There was no talk that the election results weren't correct, because they counted those ballots in public. They were paper ballots that the voters marked themselves by hand, and they were counted in public all over the country. And so people had confidence that the election results, although surprising, were correct. And that's what we need to get to here in this country. And I want to also talk to you about how long this has been going on. This has been going on for almost 2 decades. These voting machines were introduced in 2002 based on some legislation called HAVA, the Help American Vote Act. And at that time, computer scientists knew that there were problems with them and advised the election commission, the Election Assistance Commission, not to go down this path. Excuse me. But the advice of computer scientists was disregarded. And then shortly after that, computer scientists started to look at these voting systems and were able to see that they were very hackable. So I'm going to play you another clip now. And that is in 2008, I released a documentary and I videotaped one of the first hacks on a US voting machine. This was done by graduate students at Princeton. Alex Halderman, who is now an internationally known hacker, he was a graduate student at this time. And I went and connected with him at Princeton. And I'm going to play you this clip because I want you to understand how long we have known that these voting machines are problematic. This has been 10 years, 12 years longer that we've known this and that we're fighting this battle. And we have to really start thinking about what can we do? What do we need to change in terms of our strategies? How do we need to scale up and bring other people into the battle and make coalitions that are powerful and get this word out? Because what we're doing now, it's not enough. We've known about this problem for over 10 years, and we are really not making that much progress. So I want to play you this clip so you can see. Give me 1 second. Let's get it queued up. Check the audio. Now, this person that you're going to hear first is Jonathan Simon, and many of you know him. He wrote Code Red, and he is somebody who does a lot of data analysis, and he's talking about the 2004 election here, but you'll be surprised at how similar it is to what the Republicans are saying now.
We have had election fraud. There's a lot at stake. Control of the American government, control of the economy, control of the military. When there's a lot at stake, there's an incentive to fraud. The difference between our history of fraud and computerized fraud is that with computerized fraud, you can set up a program that basically gives you the number of votes you need, switches, deletes, adds without leaving a trace. Computer professionals pretty much agree that the system is tremendously vulnerable.
I'm Alex Halderman. I'm a graduate student at Princeton University. I'm Ari Feldman, and I'm also a graduate student at Princeton University. My interests are computer security and technology policy. This machine has 2 locks, one that covers both the power switch and the memory card slot. And the memory card slot is really all that's needed to introduce malicious software on the machine. All someone would need is access to one of these machines for 1 minute. Alex over here, who has modest locksmithing skills, is able to pick it in under 10 seconds. All right, so that was very hard. This machine has already been infected with our vote stealing software, and there won't be any signs in the pre-election testing that the machine is infected. Now we're ready to run our election. This is the race for President of the United States. The candidates are George Washington and Benedict Arnold.
They walked me through the election.
And so we can cast a vote for George Washington and then press next. I'm going to cast my vote for George Washington as well. And again, George Washington, father of our country. I think I favor him over most notorious traitor. And all right, so
now we have 3 votes for George Washington?
That's right. The total so far is 3 votes for George Washington, no votes for Benedict Arnold. Now election day is over. We're going to end the election and print out the totals. And we see the total: 1 vote for George Washington, 2 votes for Benedict Arnold. How did this happen? Our demonstration vote stealing software running inside the machine switched 2 of the votes from George Washington to Benedict Arnold. It switched all of the records, so there's no way to go back now and find out that the actual result was 3 votes for George.
So that was 2007 that I filmed that. And it's just crazy that to this day, those machines are still in use. And I think Benny is going to join us. And I believe that the AccuVote TSX is still in use in Shelby County, Tennessee, where he's an election commissioner. So this is what I'm saying. We really need to think about our strategies. How is it that we are going to make progress? And that's why I want all of you to get involved. I want you to watch these forums, but as you're watching these forums, I want you to start thinking, this is something that I need to work on to really, there's Benny, he made it right now. This is something that I really want to do something about. This is something that I want to commit time to improving. And elections in our country are local. And because Congress has been unable to act, we're really having to break this down on a very local level. So we're going to talk today about elections in New York and in Georgia, but whatever state you're in, you can follow the same protocols that we're talking about. And the protocols involve basically getting rid of bad election equipment. That means election equipment that does not use hand-marked paper ballots and does not allow for voters to mark the ballot themselves whenever they're able to, and implementing robust, meaningful audits that are done by hand in public that can give us all confidence. And the type of audits that were done in Georgia, unfortunately, were sort of fast and sloppy. They were done by untrained election officials who really never had experience with hand counts before. And so I'm going to show you some of the discrepancies in those machine counts. And unfortunately, that type of hand count and machine count comparison, if it's not done accurately and carefully and meticulously, does not improve our confidence, can actually weaken our confidence. So I think we got Benny coming on now. Hey, man.
Hello,
Sorry,
everybody.
we had problems with the link, but it's great to see you. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here.
You were at an election commissioner meeting?
Yep. We had to certify our special election. So.
And were there a lot of problems, or how'd it go?
No, this was pretty. It's a small municipality, so it was a pretty. It's probably the first election I voted to certify.
This is the first election that you voted to certify?
Yeah, I always vote no.
Because you don't have confidence in the results.
I don't have any evidence to say that I should put my signature on it.
Now, I just showed people the AccuVote TSX. Actually, it was the AccuVote TS, which was a voting machine made by the company at the time was called Dominion and then changed to Premier. Is that the voting machine that you guys are still using there in Shelby County?
We use the AccuVote TSX, but it's still Dominion software.
Right. It's one very slight iteration later. And does it
Right.
have basically all of the same vulnerabilities that the AccuVote TS had?
Yep.
Yeah. And how many years has it been now when that machine has been hacked at DEF CON? It's been hacked on national television. We showed the hack of it in our film, and still it's in use there.
Yeah, 14 years. We got it in 2006.
And now you're in the process of trying to get better voting machines in Shelby County. We talked about that last time. Do you have any updates for us?
No, it's they're slotting new equipment in. We had the special election and they used it as an opportunity to buy 3 ballot marking devices. We need like 1,500, so I don't think that we're going to be able to keep at that pace in order to
Which ballot marking devices did they buy?
The express vote.
Right, and those are the ones that unfortunately the security experts don't feel are really trustworthy because the computer is printing out the
paper receipt.
The paper receipt, and it's counting with a barcode, right?
Correct.
Right. So you have a couple different places where a hacker or even just the machine making a mistake can wind up interfering. So there's other voting systems that we're exploring actually here in New York, and I'll talk about those a little bit. Okay. So I want to just show people now some of the work that we're doing in Georgia, and then we're going to have Rich DeMillo is going to join us shortly, which I'm pretty excited about.
Nice.
Yeah. It's great. Benny and Rich were both on a panel, our first panel at Netroots. They were on a panel together there. So they're security chums. So I'm going to bump you backstage and I'm going to show people some of this work in Georgia now. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us about, just keeping us appraised of what's going on there in Shelby County. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. So what's happening in Georgia is that they did 3 separate counts of their November election. They did a machine count originally, then they did a hand count audit, and then they did a machine recount. And they were all very, very different. And our team has started to break that data down. And we were inspired to do this by Marilyn Marks at the Coalition for Good Governance because her team was looking at just those discrepancies in Fulton County. And we looked at that and then we said, what if we look at all of the changes between those 3 counts in all of Georgia? This was our data team leader's idea. So I want to just think we have that data for you right now. This is Georgia, original count of the machine recount. Right. So what I was talking about previously is how if we're going to do recounts, they really need to give us confidence and not raise more questions. And unfortunately, this recount in Georgia just raised a lot of questions. So if you go full screen with this, I hope that you can actually see what we've put together here. This is for the 2020 general election. They had the original machine count, and then they had a hand count audit that we'll talk about in a minute. And then and then they had a machine recount. And one of the things that kind of just made my stomach queasy when I saw this is that if you look at, for example, the difference in Trump's total votes, it's not very much. It's 17 votes. But if you look at the categories changing, so there's election day where Trump, in the second machine count, he got 10,000 votes more. And in the early voting, in the machine recount, he got 9,000 votes less. And then if you look over to Biden, you've got election day. He gained 6,000 votes on election day votes in the machine recount. And then in the early voting, he lost 5,521 votes. And then there was actually quite a difference in Biden's votes between the two counts, 874 votes less for the second count. And this is just really, really strange. And if you look at if you go and look at the, if you look at the hand count, and Benny, I want to bring you back on here to give us some commentary about this. So, because Benny is an election commissioner, so he'll be able to tell us a little bit about, whether or not that's, these are acceptable levels of differences. Now we're going to go look at now at the hand count audit, and there's a lot of discrepancies here as well. So, and again, they're just really kind of odd. So here we've got the hand count audit, and I hope that you're able to see these comparisons. If you blow it up full screen, you should be able to see it. So with the original count, the hand count audit added votes to both candidates. They found 1,020 votes for Trump and 634 votes for Biden. But then when we did the machine count, they actually went down and they lost even more votes. So they gained 2,103 votes in the first hand count audit that they did in Georgia. But then when they did the machine recount again, they lost almost 3,000 votes. So I'm gonna add Benny in here. Benny, you're an election commissioner. Do those sort of discrepancies, are those the kind of discrepancies that you would feel comfortable with?
No. That's one of the primary reasons that I just stated that I vote no in most of our elections. The funny thing, I was listening to the CEO for Dominion giving this hearing, and he seemed really well versed, but he was surprisingly underwhelming when you consider that he created the company, and he was specifically being asked about this part of the process. You should be able to explain. I always say it. Like, if you drop some CPAs down in the factory, they'll tell you how they got from one place to another.
A CPA
starting at the point.
That's like just an accountant, right?
Certified public accounting, yeah. Someone who can audit. So you need an actual person with experience in auditing. So this is willy-nilly counting. And I think that, with the machine count, some of the machines probably counted the ovals, and with the rollers going over the paper, then the folds of the paper may have caused those to count incorrectly the second time.
Well, let me just give you, we had one of our data team members actually put together what she thought is a possible explanation for this. And I think that I have her, let me just see if I have her document. And in the meantime, I'm going to give you folks something to look at while I find that document. So this is the, I'm going to put another, let's look at Fulton next. We looked at the Fulton comparisons from Fulton County. They were strikingly different. And why don't I'll let you take a look at those with people, Benny, and then I'll go find this other document where that one of our data team members thinks that she's figured out partly what some of these discrepancies are. They have to do, we think, with them counting early votes for early day votes, early voting as election day, and vice versa, kind of swapping out those votes. That's the theory that we've got going right now. So here's the Fulton County machine recount. Let's see if that came up. Can you see that, Benny?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you want to take a look and walk that through people? And I'm going to find this document that we put together that helps explain some of this.
So original machine count versus machine recount. That's what I'm looking at, right?
That's it, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sporadic, and that's you would consider that if the machine count recount is not, if it's tabulating memory cards, it should get the same count, right? It's a memory card. So you're taking stored memory and you're summing stored memory. But if you're running ballots again, then you're literally running through a scan process again that's creating ballot images and flagging certain ballots for adjudication. And those totals can be different, but again, they would be by precinct level. And from my understanding, I'm going to be so delighted to talk to Professor DeMillo, because there was this introduction of Arlo, which is this AI tool that from Garland Favorito, the way he described it is that the totals were being given to counties top down. So that is another wrinkle where you kind of don't know where the point of origin for the recount is, and then the risk limiting audit was done a different way potentially.
So yeah, so let me just clarify that for people, because you've kind of leaped over to the other audit, and we have the documentation for that audit also. So what we were showing you just now was the machine count first time versus the machine count second time. And we definitely had discrepancies there.
Was that the court mandated recount?
Yeah. Trump sued for the recount that he was legally allowed to ask for a recount after the results were certified, and he did. Now, in between that, the Secretary of State asked for a hand count audit. And one of the things that's interesting about that hand count audit is because of the way Georgia law is set up, the hand count audit was not allowed to be part of the final results. They didn't include what they found in the hand count audit, except for certain counties where they actually discovered about 2,000 votes in that hand count audit, and they went back and reincorporated that into their machine count, which is sort of like a way to sidestep the law. But this is one thing to really keep in mind clearly, which is that when you are doing an audit, the law always needs to be set up so that the audit, which is where you're going to discover your problems, is your final legal certified count. Right. When you have an audit that does not affect your final count, that is a meaningless audit, basically. That is a piece of security theater. So, but even so, the audit did not match the two machine counts. So here, for example, in Fulton County, you can see that this is the Fulton hand count audit comparison. Are you seeing that now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with the Fulton audit comparison, the Fulton hand count audit, I have to look at the original document where it's a little bit bigger for me to see that.
Like 373 difference. Everybody goes lower.
Right. Well, the hand count audit went up. Everybody gained votes generally in the hand count audit. And it looks like that's what happened here. You can see the total votes changing also, which is actually really uncomfortable to me. Just your total votes. That's your total votes. That's the number of people who voted. Why is that all over the map? So in the machine count original, this is Fulton County now. There were 524,659 votes. And then in the hand count audit, there were 525,000.
Right. I think that, like, procedurally, right? Like this is the part where I really, I guess I get the most pushback as an election commissioner. Having worked in finance, I really got my skills tested the most when I was developing applications to be audited. When I was developing against like Ernst & Young and KPMG, right? They were auditing. An audit, these to me aren't audits in the financial sense. These are just recounts, right? They're just retallies. An audit is where you take a number and you compare it to the number of people who registered, the number of people who checked in, the number of people who were rejected, and you do a reconciliation of all of the related parts. These are just counting again. So it's not a true audit. in the sense when you think about it, you get audited for your taxes, they ask for individual records, but they don't say, well, show me your bank balance again. Okay. No, they say, well, give me proof of this. Give me proof of this. Let me reconcile these against some records. And they ask you for more things. So this is
Right. So this,
theater.
yeah. So we can see that there were a lot of flaws, and I'm really glad that we have our next guest with us. So, and let's see if we can do, this is a, I don't know if we
That's
like this
rich.
configuration any better, but there, I think that's pretty good. You can see all three of us.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
Professor DeMillo, thank you so much for joining us. And for people who don't know him, he's somewhat of a legend. He's a computer science professor from Georgia Tech and has really an international reputation in computer science and security. So what happened in Georgia? What's going on?
We're talking about the recounts. I overheard a portion of your prior segment. It was chaotic. The state was pushed into a kind of analysis that it wasn't prepared to do. The audit teams, the recount teams, weren't properly trained. It was extremely decentralized. Everything is done on a county by county basis. So comparing what happened in one county versus another county, or in the case of Fulton County, comparing what happened at one table in Fulton County to a table next to it, was nearly impossible. So what you get out of this is a general sense of what the election was probably all about. But it's very hard to rely on any particular count or recount as the definitive summary of what actually happened on election day.
And that's because it's really not being done in a careful, trained way with the proper protocols.
Yes. So counting things is very hard for human beings to do. Take a stack of paper, take a ream of printer paper, and sit down and try to count the number of sheets in that ream. You're going to lose track at about 200.
Especially for phone rings.
Yeah. So the Secretary of State heard me talking about this and wants to chat. You're going to lose track at about 200 sheets of paper. And here we're counting 5 million ballots with people that are untrained, making up their own rules as they go along. There's some science behind this. People know how to count accurately. It takes a team of people to count accurately. They have to do precisely the same thing every time. They have to have checks. There has to be redundancy, what we call redundancy in the process, so that there's no single person that's responsible for one answer. And none of those things happened in the Georgia recounts. So without saying anything about how reliable any of the recounts were, you can't really infer anything about what the recounts are showing you what happened in the actual election.
And we also know that equipment is extremely unreliable. They're voting on the Dominion ICX, and a lot of security experts have come out and said that it's a very problematic machine, right?
Well, so there's a number of ways to unpack that. The machine that marks the ballots is an extremely dangerous piece of technology. It's a computer that essentially does the job of a 90-cent Bic pen and costs you $3,000 to do it. And like any computer, it can be misprogrammed, it can make errors, it can be hacked. And what you worry about is that some third party or some insider is going to exploit the weaknesses in the system and use it to corrupt the election. There's really no indication that was a factor at all in Georgia. And I was one of the biggest critics of purchasing these machines to begin with, so my antenna were twitching the whole time. The difficulty was with the counting of the ballots. So this was what I'm calling an omni-channel election. We're used to people showing up on election day and pulling levers or touching screens to cast their votes in large numbers. That didn't happen in 2020. In 2020, the voting was about evenly split between people who showed up on election day, people who showed up in person to vote on Dominion voting machines during early elections, and mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots are hand-marked paper ballots. There's no computer involved in marking a hand-marked paper ballot. It's the most reliable way of recording the voters' intent.
Right. My understanding is that you are a strong supporter of hand-marked paper ballots.
I'm a strong supporter of getting as much unnecessary, expensive technology out of the voting process as possible because I've invented a lot of this technology, and I know just how awful it can be if it's not handled properly.
So what most of the experts that I understand are advocating in Georgia right now is to eliminate these Dominion ICX machines and move to a lower technology system, which would be hand-marked paper ballots and then just ballot marking devices for those voters who need them. And is that
Indeed. Indeed, and if we had done that, we could have saved the taxpayers in the state a lot of money. These machines were underutilized.
80 million.
Yeah, and counting. They're underutilized. They're extremely complex to set up. We're talking about 30,000 separate pieces of equipment, 30,000 printers that have to be synchronized to the machines that they're attached to. Even for a large corporation, that would be a daunting task. And here we're talking about a bootstrap operation that's largely staffed by non-professionals and volunteers, and not surprisingly, it's a difficult IT problem to solve, and we saw some of that. But that being said, I think the marking of the ballots was not my principal concern. The issue that I had with this election was what happened when we started counting and recounting and auditing.
I appreciate your saying that. And what we're going to do, I've reached out to Virginia Martin, who's really an expert at hand counting ballots, and I'm hoping to have her on the next forum so that we can really talk about what the problems were in Georgia, because it looks like they had significant problems. And Virginia has hand counted paper ballots meticulously year after year for 10 years in Columbia County, when she was the commissioner there. So we know it can be done. But I want to just ask you about some of this information about Dominion ICX. This was a security report that came from Texas, where over and over again, the Dominion machines, including the ICX, were listed as certification should be denied because they had multiple problems. They lost results, adjudication results were lost. The DRE station failure, that's for the computer-only systems. The installation, complex, error-prone, and tedious. And then I know one that you talked about, disappearing messages. You said that you'd experienced that.
Yeah. So during the scanning process, again, realize that what we're talking about here is low cost technology. This isn't the kind of thing you would see in a highly sensitive application. The scanners in particular are commodity scanners, and voters interact with them. Voters insert the ballots that are printed in the ballot marking devices into these scanners, and the scanners are supposed to pull the piece of paper in and recognize what the vote was and make a record of it. Well, the scanners don't always work right, and the little micro switches that are used to determine whether or not the paper has been properly placed don't always work right. And when they don't, there's a message that pops up. The Texas report talks about the disappearing message. That's what they're talking about. The LCD at the top of the printer says error. I didn't recognize what you put in, but it's only for a split second. So if you happen to not be looking at the LCD when the error message comes up, you'll miss it. Even if you're looking at it, a voter who's never seen one before has no idea what to do with it, and that kind of leads for scanning chaos. And I witnessed some of this myself during the early runoffs in summer and early fall. And it's one of the many things about the Dominion products that gives you pause. They really are lashing together off the shelf, what we call commercial off the shelf COTS. Technology, trying to make a mission critical system out of it, and it simply doesn't work.
Right. And then we see there also another really serious vulnerability listed, the USB port vulnerability. While they were testing it, the machine actually connected to one of the testers' phones. And that just seems, I mean, would you recommend these machines to any county that was looking for a voting machine?
No, and in fact, I was part of a team that very visibly argued against purchasing these machines in Georgia, and the Texas certification report was one of the documents that we presented to the General Assembly. The General Assembly in Georgia was just hell bent to purchase any kind of ballot marking device. They picked the lowest cost one and arguably the worst one on the market.
Wow. And I'm just going to get into, I just want to get onto a one-on-one conversation with you about one other thing. There's this huge hack right now, or alleged hack, of the Department of Homeland Security, of the Treasury Department, and other federal agencies. And I have to say, as somebody who's been very skeptical about the voting machine security, we got this big message from the Department of Homeland Security, and they said this was the most secure election in U.S. history. Meanwhile, they themselves were being hacked for 9 months.
Well, so it wasn't quite as simple as that. The company that supports cyber operations in many federal agencies and many large corporations uses network management software that had been the subject of what's called a supply chain hack, which means that somewhere along the way in the building of this software, some malicious actor, people speculate a foreign actor, people in particular speculate Russia, inserted malware called Sunburst into the software, and then that got incorporated into the Orion network management software that SolarWinds sold to FireEye, and FireEye is in all of these federal agencies.
Okay, but let me just ask you something.
Yeah.
This is a supply chain hack. And so for people who don't understand that means that there were parts inside their systems that got hacked inside of systems that they were using, right?
Yes.
Now,
So this is the main moral of the story, Lulu, that even this very sophisticated company that is looking actively for signs of penetration had a difficult time detecting this kind of hack.
DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and you're saying SolarWinds, the company that was supplying them, is like top-notch guys, top-notch people, top-notch women.
Yeah, FireEye is one. SolarWinds is the software the software developer. And so the moral of the story is, if this highly diligent, highly capable industry has a difficult time with recognizing and rejecting hacks, what chance do you have if you're a county election manager in rural Georgia or Iowa? You have no chance at all. That you're completely at the mercy of anyone who wants to get into your system. You don't have to be connected to the internet. You don't have to have wireless modems. This software is born compromised, and that was what we discovered this week.
Thank you. And people are constantly saying, well, we watch these voting machines constantly. They could never be hacked. But voting machines have many internal parts also, and many of them are manufactured in China, in different countries all over the world, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the software is distributed, and we know that software development for companies like Dominion is geographically distributed, and
their headquarters are in Serbia.
There you go. The software development teams contribute parts of code from all over the world, and they get combined in what's called a build, and the build is what gets delivered to the customer.
Okay, so the moral of our story is less technology, more hand-marked paper ballots.
More hand-marked paper ballots. More auditing. More proper auditing of the scanning process to make sure that the scanners haven't been compromised, and we'll all be better off.
And you were also saying really encouraging people right now in Georgia, we really intense runoffs. How do you want people to vote? They just have a couple options. They don't have a paper ballot if they go to vote in person earlier election day. But what are their
so the options are to request from the Secretary of State's website an absentee ballot. The Secretary of State's office and the counties are getting much better at satisfying those requests. You will get it in a few days, and you can either mail that completed ballot in or take it to a drop box, which is a secure place that is serviced by a courier, a secure courier, and then your hand marked paper ballot gets counted. Or if you simply don't trust the drop offs or the mail, then your next best choice is to vote in person, but vote early. And in case there are any challenges, the voting is light. It's would be much more difficult to conceal any kind of bad operations in early voting. The least favorite choice, and the one I hope people stay away from, is showing up on January 5th to one of these large polling places to cast your vote. But if we keep this omni-channel voting strategy going in the state, I think we're just kind of getting to a level of comfort where we can tolerate what's going to happen on January 5th.
Okay, and you're part of a lawsuit, an ongoing lawsuit that is pushing for hand-marked paper ballots for all of Georgia for any voter who's able to mark by hand, right?
I am not part of any lawsuit, I'm an independent observer. I do testify when I'm called, but I'm not a retained expert for any side. My only concern is with the security of the system, with making sure that public statements about security and insecurity about the system are grounded in fact and science.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all of your advice. What I hear you saying there is for voters in Georgia, if they can, get that absentee ballot and use that because it's a paper ballot, they can mark themselves. And for a lot of people on the calls who are, texting to people in Georgia and sending them postcards and calling them, you can pass that information on to people when you're on those calls, that the voting by mail is the way to mark their ballot by hand themselves if they are able to.
Indeed.
So thank you so much for giving us all of these insights and helping us sort through all of this. We're all sort of confused and, really wanting to help in every way that we can. So we really, really appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you so much.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Lulu.
Okay. All right, so we just have a little bit of time left, but I want to focus on a couple things. I want to talk about New York, and New York is really important to me because I live here, and it also is important because there's a big battle coming up. New York is in the process of certifying a machine called the ExpressVote XL, and it has many of the problems that we were just talking about with Professor DeMillo. It's a touchscreen voting machine that counts votes with barcodes, and you might think, why would a state that's watched other states struggle and have so much trouble with this bad equipment, why would they start using it here in New York? And it's a little unclear, but what the commissioners have said is that basically they're afraid that ES&S will sue them if they don't certify it. And so they are just blindly going ahead and certifying it. And so I want all of you to know that you have an opportunity to help us to stop the ExpressVote XL from coming to New York. And we're having meetings. Smart Elections has formed a New York working group. And I just want to, we're going to put up a banner here, stop the ExpressVote XL, and it's going to have an exclamation point. So this is what we're working on in New York, and we have a meeting every Friday at noon. And if you go to our website, and our website is smartelections.us, and you will see there that you can sign up for the Friday at noon Zoom meeting. It might have last Friday's date on it, but we'll get that changed quickly. And don't worry, you can still, it's the same Zoom link every Friday. So Friday at noon, you can join us and help us to try to figure out how to, the same battle that's happening there in Georgia, where they're working to have hand count paper ballots for voters who are able to, and secure ballot marking devices for those who aren't. This battle is coming to New York, and other states around the country are also engaged in this. And so what we're doing here, we're working on legislation, and we are even considering filing an injunction, a lawsuit, to try to stop the certification. And what does that mean? That's going to bring us to our next topic, which is fundraising. So what happens if you file a lawsuit? You have to raise a lot of money. And we are already in the process of doing a fundraiser. And I want to just let you know sort of some ways that you can support us. So we are launching a campaign now to raise $60,000, and that would be just for our operating costs. And if we want to actually file a lawsuit or an injunction, we would probably have to raise like another $100,000 on top of that. And so we really need you to help us to reach out. Maybe you have friends who run a family foundation, or maybe you know a celebrity who lives in New York and doesn't want to vote on a touchscreen barcode voting machine and maybe wants to get involved in this cause. Or maybe you just have friends who are really concerned about this type of thing and want to support it. Or maybe you yourself want to support it. So however you can, we're asking you to go ahead and donate at smartelections.us/donate. And we're rolling out a whole campaign. We're in the process of making a video and getting some perks for you. We're going to have some really cool color posters, 8.5 by 11 posters that we made at Netroots, and me and Benny and Rich DeMillo were all in that poster, and it was made by a really great comic book artist. So we're going to have those available for people who donate. And you can also become a tax-deductible monthly subscriber. And there's other things that you can do. You can join our team, meaning become a volunteer and help us out. And the best way to do that is if you go to our website, there's places to sign up. Again, the website is smartelections.us, and there's places there to sign up for our team. You know, the easiest way to sign up is at CountTheVote.Info. So Count the Vote is a site that we put together to really where we can show all of our data. And we have a lot more data coming. I just walked you through some of the data about Georgia, but we are actually in the process of looking at a lot more data. The website for that is CountTheVote.Info. And I'll tell you I'm going to show you one more thing before we go, which is some of the stuff that we're working on. This is, let me just double check that I'm going to show you the right thing here. Yeah, so this is really interesting. This is the type of data that we're working on right now. We've been comparing poll tapes to election results because it's one way to figure out what is going on. What are the problems with the elections? We look at results tapes. Those are the tapes that are created on election night in the polls, and we compare them to the results as they're published. And I don't know if you can see this screen. I'm trying to blow it up big, but this is one from Georgia that we looked at, and this one is particularly weird because it has places where the results really shouldn't change. With the results tapes are posted on election night in the polling location, and those results should stay the same when they're published on a county's website. In this situation, some of the votes went up when they were published, and some of the votes went down. Now, maybe a few votes might go up from like a provisional ballot being added, but why would votes go down? We really don't ever want to see votes going down, but we saw candidates for the Senate lose 5 votes, 2 votes, 3 votes, 1 vote. And I actually called the Fulton County office today, and I spoke with a really nice man there. His name is Dwight Brower, and he was very polite, and he really had no explanation for it. He said that he would talk to some of their other staff and see what they thought might have happened. But he was really sweet, and he said, "I'll be honest with you, ma'am. I cannot explain it. I honestly cannot. It's interesting." That was what he said to me. So I appreciate his sincerity and that he was just being honest. He didn't have an explanation for it. We have other ones that have even much larger discrepancies. Let me see. I have to stop the screen and I'll show you one more. This one is Forsyth County and the Nichols precinct. And this is a much larger discrepancy. Here you can see the results tape showed Donald Trump with 150 votes. And the election and the reporting on the website showed him at 317 votes. And then Biden had 87 on the results tape. And on election day, the election day results that were posted on the website was 145. So these are huge discrepancies. Now, it's possible that there's a poll tape that we're missing there. And that's why we haven't, like, you know, we're not shouting like the theater's on fire, the theater's on fire. There may be an explanation for this, and it may be that they didn't post all the poll tapes. But we actually had quite a few counties where they didn't post the poll tapes, and we're going to be following up with the counties. We're starting to do public records requests. So that's Benny, I popped you back on with us to sort of say, wrap this up. You were the one who really encouraged us all to look at these poll tapes. And when you see poll tapes with discrepancies like that, does it make you concerned?
It does. It was so funny. I was, again, watching the Michigan hearing, and the CEO, I mean, he had like some rose-colored glasses on. You know, he was defending the Dominion system, and he was like, well, election officials, they compare polls. They compare the tabulated results to the printouts, and I was like, no, they don't. Matter of fact, they reject the request for the poll tape. It was remarkable to see him, you know, under that guise that's what election officials would do, because you want to validate the count. However, it just doesn't happen. So now
just break that down for me, because I know you're an election commissioner. So this was a commissioner in Michigan?
No, this was the CEO of Dominion at a hearing for defending his system, saying, we don't expect people to believe our systems. We expect them to challenge them by comparing the printouts.
The printouts being the printouts are the poll tapes. That's the poll tapes or results tapes, and comparing those poll tapes to the
tabulated results.
And what are the tabulator, meaning after it's gone through the election management
my
system?
Tabulated results from my Dominion system and compare them to what the precinct printout said.
And he was saying that the election officials were doing that.
And everybody there's no way that we could have any problems, because that's what the election officials are doing. I was like, no, they're not.
So you're an election official. Do you guys compare poll tapes to the final results from the tabulator?
No, we do not, and we are mandated by state law to do so. And the only reason why I certified
just slow down. Just slow down. So the state law in Tennessee mandates that you do that process, that you compare the election night poll tapes to the tabulator results.
Yep.
But you guys don't do it.
Nope.
It's legally mandated and you don't do it.
Nope. That's why I vote no all the time.
And you're an election commissioner and you can't make them do that?
Nope. I don't have 3 votes to do it.
Because the other commissioners are not interested in following the law?
I don't know. I literally vote no. I literally asked this question. I said, did we compare the poll tapes to this is the poll tape exercise that Bloomberg wrote about. Like, I know why you need to do it, right? I was the first person not the first person, but I was most recent history to do the exercise.
You made this comparison of the poll tapes to final results, kind of a national issue. Like, this is a way for us to check the results. So you know about it. And you're saying that even in states where it's mandated, it's not being done.
Correct.
Okay, so we've gone a little bit over time, but I think we really just wanted to bring this point home. This is what we're doing, and it might seem sort of slow and tedious. We're counting these, point by point by point. We're looking at this poll tape. We're looking at the tabulated results. This is how it's done. This is
a very necessary exercise.
This is how we gain confidence in our election results. We understand that the results have to be accurate, that they have to be transparent, they have to be secure, and they have to be public. And voters with disabilities have to be part of that process. Their votes also have to be secure, accurate, transparent, and able to be verified by the public. So, I love this. Okay, we have a comment here that I absolutely have to put up, because this is what I really want to see. I have to tell you, this makes my night when I see this. I see a comment here from Bonnie Chidster, and I'm going to show this. She says, every system I in contact with is having these difficulties. We will fix it with patience and persistence. And then actually she had another comment that just made my night. She said, I have work to do. This is my county, Shelby, in Tennessee. That is it. This is what I'm saying to you. These are your counties. These are your votes. You have to get in there. You have to do this work. So join us. Come back and join us every 2 weeks. We are here to help you and support you and guide you and motivate you. Benny and I are both working all the time on this, as you can tell. And Benny, tell them about our past episodes.
You can, there is a link below. And well, it's not down at the bottom anymore, but there's a link below. You can look at all the past episodes.
I will put it after the episode. I will put it in the YouTube and the Facebook.
Yeah, because I can't point down if it's not there.
Yeah, so if you want to find out all the information from the past episodes where we've talked about stuff, it's really informational, and some of it's very exciting and revelatory. So go ahead and check those out. And the other thing I want to say to you is you are our PR machine. So if you found this information useful and you think this is life-changing, which it is, then you need to tell your friends and your family and share this link with them, share it on social media. One thing that we found out is we think we're being shadow banned on social media, on Twitter. So what we'd like you to do is just take our tweets and make sure you can find them. Go to @SmartElections, @Smart_elections. That's our @Smart_elections. I think we have our Twitter banner up here. Twitter @Smart_elections. Follow us, please, and tweet at Jack and tell Jack to make sure that our tweets are coming through. We do not want to be shadow banned. We are an evidence-based organization. We always tell the truth. We're accurate. We're nonpartisan, and we deserve to have our information out, and you, the public, need it. So we're going to sign off now. We're just a little bit over time, but we wanted to just make sure that we really get you all the information. And join us again in 2 weeks. We're here on Tuesday, December 29th. Go ahead and sign up now. You can sign up for usually 4 to 5 episodes in advance. Tell your friends, tell your family, and meet you back here in 2 weeks. This is what democracy looks like.
Take part.